hypnosis or hypnosis-based modalities, or at least modalities which facilitate self-reflection in better ways, have much faster results.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Schaefer of Talks with Dr. Schaefer. Thank you so much for being here. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I am passionate about using storytelling as a tool to help you reclaim your story and build your most beautiful future. Today, I am so excited to be joined by a fellow scientist and guest, Orestis Vasilakas. Orestis is a certified hypnotherapist, and he also has a background as a theoretical physicist. Orestis is passionate about helping people overcome chronic pain through hypnosis. Orestis, thank you so much for joining us today on Talks with Dr. Schaefer.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and share all I know on the topic with everyone, because really it's been my journey as well, having chronic pain and finding a way out of it. And I know these approaches are something new. There's still something not many people know about, and I would really love people to know what their options are, and of course, then they can choose whatever they want. So it's good first to have like a full display of their options, and that's why I'm excited to be here and talk about other ways to overcome chronic pain. Yeah.
I love this. And Orestis, as a neurologist, one thing that I really try to impart upon our listeners and upon my clients is the power that we have over our nervous system and over our mindset. And there's a beautiful marriage between the practice of hypnotherapy and mindset work. There's connection there. And so I'd love to hear your story, and I appreciate you sharing your story of dealing with chronic pain and how that brought you to this place where you're helping others as well with overcoming their experience with their pain.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this. Because actually, I'm going a bit tangentially somewhere else now, because you said that your experience with pain, right? Because that's what pain is. It's an experience. It's a living experience. So it's a true living experience. And at the same time, experiences can be shifted, can be changed, can be modified, can be altered. So I like saying sometimes that pain is like happiness, because happiness is also an experience. And it's affected both by what happens externally to us and also our own thoughts and ideas we have in our own head. And pain behaves exactly the same way. And we can go more into this a bit later, because my personal story, it's quite a long one. It starts from 2011, something like that. And it started with plantar fasciitis, an injury at the bottom of the foot, and which was taking way too long to heal. And then later it spread the pain on both my feet and then on my hands to an extent I could barely walk. It was was really bad. And then the pain spread. Like at some point, became really bad. I had carpal tunnel. In the meantime, I got a bunch of other orthopedic issues that were independent of that. I've done several surgeries myself. Done a shoulder surgery, 2 carpal tunnel surgeries. I have an early hip arthritis, and I'm almost 40 years old, and some lower back issues. So I had my fair deal of long-lasting pain in my life so far. And it started quite early. It started like when I was around 25 years old, 27. And this other thing that was spreading, Eventually, it was diagnosed as fibromyalgia, uh, a bit randomly.
Mm.
I was at the doctor for something else, at the pain management doctor for one of my other things. And I said, what about this? Because I've stopped asking doctors about this because I've reached a point where I believe that no one can really help me with it.
Mm.
So I was just suffering with it. And in 2016, a pain management doctor told me that, yeah, this is like an atypical fibromyalgia, what you described. So I was
Mm.
like, great. It's also atypical. um, yeah. And I want to stress this that, like, now I know there are a lot of people with chronic pain who are really into this tunnel of suffering and
Mm.
of feeling there is no escape. And I was in this too. So now you see me smiling and talking about it in a light and,
Yeah.
jolly manner and laughing. But back in 2016, it was really, really bad. Like I was at a really desperate point. I was having essentially a flare up every 10 days, and it would last for 4 days. And the big chunk of it, and during these 4 days, most of my time I would just pass out and sleep.
And what was your experience when you had this pain and you felt you needed help, right? Because pain is a signal to our body. It's very confusing when it becomes chronic and it's not, I injured myself, I have pain, I need to go to the hospital to get stitches, right? Or I broke
Yeah.
my leg. This pain is telling me I need to go right now to the hospital. It's important and it's actionable, right? It's telling me, directing me what to do. When you were coping with chronic pain that wasn't really leaving for more than days, and coming back, and you were feeling disempowered, that there was nothing to do in that moment, how did that affect how you interacted with medical professionals, how open you felt about sharing your experience with them?
Well, in the beginning, I was very open because
Mm-hmm.
I was really looking for a solution. I wanted this thing to stop, and I wanted to understand what's going on with my body. uh, because I was very fixated back then on the idea that all this means there is something wrong with my body. I was stuck in biology, back then, and not seeing and noticing the psychological aspects of things. And we can go into a big philosophical talk that all psychology translates to biology. Okay, the question is which language is better to deal with something, which approach. So I was still like looking for medical reasons, and I was visiting doctors again and again and again. And yeah, nothing was found, but also no one was giving me a diagnosis, and it was getting it was getting disheartening. It was like, uh, I started getting depressed, sad. I felt my world was getting smaller. I couldn't do many of the things I used to enjoy. Then I had a bunch of other orthopedic injuries on top of that happened later, which they were diagnosed, but even those took long time to diagnose because they were not very typical either. um, so it was very, very challenging. I never felt, at least I had the privilege, I never felt to have been gaslit by the doctors. Uh, because I know this is a very common experience with many chronic pain, with many people with chronic pain. I also, though, felt that medicine could not give me an answer. I felt that the model I've built inside my head so far in my life of how one approaches in solving a feeling, a sensation in their body started collapsing. And even though this started collapsing, because it was like knocking the same door again and again and no one answering, I didn't know which other door to knock. And this is the desperation part. So that's how it felt for me, and it just, yeah, made me feel that, you know, there is not much doctors can do for me.
That was so elegantly spoken and stated that it didn't feel like there was a door to knock on. You'd investigated everything. But here you are today, smiling and laughing, reflecting on these experiences, having now reframed them and having worked on mindset and your relationship to chronic pain. What caused that shift? What hard work did you do to get from there to where you are today?
Well, it was a lot of hard work, uh, and at the same time, it had a lot of randomness in it because I had no guide in this. So a lot of little things happened, which occurred, in a very like random manner. So I was going a bit like tap 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 tap, and until I reached here I'm today, and now I know there is a more straight path for most people to follow. So it was many little things. The first thing for me was, I had another condition back then, which I don't have anymore. I had esophagus hypersensitivity. For people who don't know what this is, it's basically you get the feeling that you have reflux, but when they go and test you and they measure how much acid comes up your throat, because I also had reflux back then, they just don't find so much acid as your symptoms suggest. So then they told me that, oh, just like your esophagus is hypersensitive and it's giving you these random signals that, imitate the symptoms you would get from a heartburn. And I didn't know what to make of it. And my gastroenterologist doctor gave me an antidepressant, an old school and tricyclic antidepressant for it. And I was very skeptical. I've never taken psychiatric pills before. I'm also part of a generation where we grew up with a lot of suspicion about psychiatric medication, psychiatrists, psychologists in general, a lot of taboos around mental health. But I really was at a point that either I'm taking this and this gets better, or I go to the other doctor who thinks I should do surgery. So I took it. And it worked. And this, in retrospect, I realize was the first catalyst for me in my story, that something that acts on the brain can have an effect on something I feel on my body, taking a psychiatric medication. Yeah. So that was the first thing. And then one thing led to another. Eventually, because I couldn't find any solutions and the symptoms have gotten so bad, as I said, I decided to go and see a pain psychologist who was doing CBT. Now, to be honest, this experience didn't go very well for various reasons. However, it did give me some first tools that showed me I can have even a tiny bit of control of my bodily experience through my own mindset and my own self-talk. It didn't help a lot, but it just gave me this next millimeter on the thread, which I started pulling and unraveling since then. So the first is like that the medication on the brain can affect body sensations, and the second is that my own self-talk can affect how long my fibromyalgia flare-ups used to last, how strong they are. And it was difficult because the effect I was getting was small and it required a lot of persistence and noticing patterns over long term to convince myself that this really helps. And all this time, I was going just with the hope that it has to help because I have nothing else.
Yeah.
So,
How long did that take, Orestis, when you look back? Because I think that is an important nugget for people to take away when they are really diving into learning these new habits and mindset and work with something like hypnosis, hypnotherapy. It doesn't help immediately. You are basically making data points. You are investing in yourself. You're building new mechanisms to cope with and experience pain, whether it be psychological or physical pain. You're building something and you can't do it in a day. So share with us, how long that took and maybe how long it took before you really started to get that feeling back that I think this is working.
um, well, while I was still doing the CBT methods, it wasn't very effective, to be honest, because
Mm.
then I had to visit a psychiatrist who gave me a lot of medication for the pain, and this helped. This helped a lot. The medication was the thing that first helped a lot. But this is something that many people with fibromyalgia would find it helpful once they realize it. I kept taking the medication with the desire to have the attitudes and the behaviors I had in the past,
Mm.
which was overstressing myself, overdoing things, overexerting myself, being too much of a perfectionist. So eventually I reached the point where the medication stopped working. And I was taking all this medication that used to work, and I was having symptoms again with the side effects of the medication on top of that. So I reached the point where I was like, and there I was like, okay, like, then I really have to look more into this mindset thing. And the other thing is when I found another psychiatrist, because I was moving countries through all of this because of my career. I was doing a career in academia, and I was doing a PhD in one place, a postdoc in another, a postdoc in another place. And I found a new psychiatrist here in Prague, and they told me, if I was taking what you are taking, I would be like a zombie. Probably way too dramatic, way to phrase it. However, it made me think that, okay, like, if he is telling me that and I take all that and I'm still like, like having 1,000 volts running through my veins, then it's not the medication that will do it for me.
Mm.
And basically, I started the CBT thing in 2000, around 2016. And this experience with my psychiatrist in Prague was around, I don't remember exactly, it was around 2020, something like that.
Mm.
So it took a long time. There were many other factors. However, I'm aware today that actually there are some studies that show CBT is not very, very effective for chronic pain. And hypnosis or hypnotherapy, hypnosis-based modalities, or at least modalities which facilitate self-reflection in better ways, have much faster results. So one doesn't need 4 years. Sometimes chronic pain can go in one session.
Mm.
Some depends on the case. It's highly individual. Sometimes in things where there is a strong behavioral background underneath, like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and a lot of behaviors that drive a lot of the pain, then this needs a longer retraining and gathering data points and staying focused
Mm.
on the goal. Yeah, this
Yes.
typically needs, like, this is typically where one starts on a path, and they have to keep following it and notice the improvements along the way. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I like how you talked about focus. Try to give listeners who maybe don't know what hypnotherapy is. Maybe they've seen it in movies or they've seen these kind of group hypnotherapy sessions where, it seems a bit frightening because they're going to, the story is they're going to make you act like something you're not, right? They're going to hypnotize you and now they have power over you. And that's just not really what hypnotherapy is. So if you could share with us, what is hypnotherapy and what are the goals of hypnotherapy? What place is it taking the individual to?
Yeah. So that's actually a very difficult question to answer. Like, surprisingly, it's a very difficult question to answer, universally at least. I can tell you my own answer on that.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why it's universally difficult to answer is because there is no commonly accepted definition of what hypnosis is.
Mm.
Now, however, there are many different approaches in hypnosis for many different effects. Some of them have indeed this element of being on stage and doing the funny things and all these ridiculous things. And some of them have this image of the person in hypnotherapy where they're usually calm and relaxed and they're having an experience. And some other models of hypnosis is just like having an engaging conversation with someone. And they don't look like hypnosis at all, at least to the untrained eye. Now, all these things have one thing in common. Have a set of things in common. The thing they have in common is that we are essentially using principles of communication and psychology to facilitate immersive interactive experiences with another person. And because these rules and principles are so general and so powerful, all these different types of experiences can be created. So in hypnotherapy specifically, we use these principles together with more background from psychology, like parts therapy, ego states, and other notions of psychology to facilitate through this very targeted communication effects and experiences that bring change to the other person. That's what we do. It's essentially that's what hypnotherapy is about from my perspective. And there are many different versions of hypnotherapy, and there are many different schools and approaches and practitioners. So if people are looking for solutions in this direction, there should be aware that hypnotherapy is a very broad term. It's an umbrella term.
Mm-hmm.
And deeper investigation and understanding is needed about the person they go or what they may apply and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And I think, that's something that we understand is important in every relationship. And the doctor-patient relationship, not every doctor-patient relationship is going to be a great fit, right? You do need to feel comfortable with the person. You need to know that you are aligned in your goals and that there's a certain buy-in to your methodology, whether you're a physician or a psychologist or a certified hypnotherapist like yourself. That relationship needs to be there for trust. And it brings me back to what you said about hypnotherapy and hypnosis. If someone's under hypnosis, it can be something as, if they're very have a high degree of hypnosability, which I understand. I'd love your input on this. People have different capabilities to even be hypnotized potentially. Is what I understand. So, people have a different openness to it. So perhaps someone can be very hypnotizable and have certain behaviors influence, but maybe someone else, it's just a deeper conversation because without helping them get to that place in their body, in their mind. Without that external help, they may not be able to access that place because of their mindset, because of how the structure of their mind is when they're just at baseline and no one's helping them move their focus from the external world internally.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I think your last point summarizes pretty well. It's about helping someone move their focus from the external more internally and more accessing the feelings. Now, the notion the notion of hypnotizability, unfortunately, it's built on more traditional approaches to hypnosis, which are less flexible and grading people according to what hypnotic effects one can achieve. However, if one as a practitioner adopts a more freeform, client-centered approach, where you go into this communication loop with the other person, you don't follow a script, but you notice them, you are there with them, you notice all the communication patterns from what they say, the intonation of the voice, the twitches in the face, how they move their hands, uh, everything, like the whole gamut of communication channels. And you use that in the communication process for effects for which the other person is willing to go in, then I would say the vast majority of people can experience that. The only requirement is that they are willing to go along with it, they have a skilled practitioner, and they feel safe in the environment and about what is happening. To which I want to add one more thing, because many times when people talk about hypnosis, we are used to say about the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind. And in all my explanation I gave about hypnosis now, I've never mentioned once this word. It is when we facilitate these interactive, immersive, evocative experiences through communication that the unconscious mind comes forward. And comes forward even with the other person having their eyes open and speaking to us. Because the unconscious mind is always there. We're just bringing it to the center stage. And that's what brings people the realizations, the change, and all these, even getting pain-free. Yeah.
Yeah. It feels like also helping them to, again, really focused on focus, because that is just so incredibly important for mindset and for hypnotherapy. Helping someone to turn away from distractions, because while we are very complex creatures and our body and nervous system is doing many things at one time,
yeah.
right? It's processing
It's like
so much information. We can't attend to all of that information. The conscious part of our brain can't focus on everything at once. And we have to, especially if we've been living a life of distraction and our
Exactly.
focus just always external, we have to break those old habits and build new ones to learn to focus inward.
100%. I couldn't agree more on that. I would say that our unconscious mind runs all the time, processes most of the information for us, and there is only one part of it that becomes conscious to us. There is even a debate if there is a difference between conscious and unconscious mind, or the mind is just one. There are different models. However, for everyday terms, we can keep the separation of conscious and unconscious mind.
Right.
And basically, the unconscious mind is not something that's hidden from us. So I think we have grown in this culture which treats the unconscious mind that's always somewhere in the back that we don't have access to and doesn't affect us, and then we bring it forward, and then all kinds of things happen. We open the door to the sixth dimension. That's a metaphor.
I love it. I love this idea that like really paying attention to ourselves spells
Yeah,
trouble when it's really the opposite, right?
exactly, because the unconscious mind is the way we automatically create our experience all the time. Even now that people are listening to us speak, that's a common example I like to give. They don't pay attention word by word what we say. They just make meaning. You listeners just make meaning right now. I mean, now that we pointed out, you may pay attention more word by word. And that's how your attention shifts. However, all this created automatically. What we see is created automatically. We don't think what we see. So the unconscious mind is always there. And we live in a culture of distraction where we get distracted. And as humans, also naturally, we avoid things that make us uncomfortable. We want to move away from pain and go into pleasure. And that sometimes leads us in a situation where we don't pay attention to the difficult thing to address it. And then it starts festering inside. And then it creates the experience of physical pain or anxiety or other mental health issues and difficulties. Could be even like not being able to move our business forward, and procrastination and insomnia sometimes. And exactly, it's like using our attentions, the part of our unconscious mind that becomes conscious, to pay attention to these things and self-reflect and become aware and present, that starts bringing the solution. And that's sometimes an uncomfortable thing to do. We have to look the thing, like the circle won't close unless we look in the center. If we look out of the circle, we will keep running in the circle. Yeah.
I love that. I love that. And it's so important. And what I term it in my work with clients for life coaching and, business coaching is it's the messy middle.
Exactly.
And there's a children's book that many people have read called We're Going on a Bear Hunt. And so many people know this book. And I remind them of this concept that you're teaching little baby. We can't go over it. We can't go under it. We've got to go through it. Like there's no other way. And as you said, if we just keep trying to avoid it, the problem becomes bigger. And it's almost like a habit in the sense that it's making roots. It's becoming more entrenched in our lives instead of just saying, oh, that's there. I better deal with it early on. But we need coping mechanisms to do that. We need insight. We need to do that mindset work. And I love this idea of using hypnotherapy as a safe and accessible way to help people who haven't mastered that skill yet to get there, to improve their relationship in their lives with their physical pain, with emotional pain, just with their relationship to themselves and the world around them.
Yes, and self-hypnosis actually is very, very accessible and very easy for anyone to do as a method for general self-reflection. Like, I think sometimes because of the mythology hypnosis carries with it, we overcomplicate things. Because if you start from the principle that the unconscious mind is always there, and I just need a way to facilitate bringing it a little more forward than it usually is, in a way that also has a specific intention, why I'm bringing it forward, then you don't need complicated methods and pendulum swinging in front of your eyes. It can be as simple as like really like saying like I want to experience a pleasant emotion, and just like putting your hands to your heart, closing your eyes, and taking 3 deep breaths, and as you exhale, say the name of the emotion you want to experience. It can be as simple as that. Yeah. So
That's
try that.
beautiful. Yeah, I'm going there in my mind, and it comes down to bringing you back into your body and learning how to tap into your nervous system, which is in
Yes.
control of everything, right?
Yes.
And tapping into it and using breath work, using control of your autonomic nervous system, right?
Yeah.
And learning to do that. I think it's so important when we are so distracted and we're in crisis management mode because maybe our hierarchical needs are not being met. We don't feel safe for one reason or another. And so we're always in crisis mode, and we don't invest in ourselves in a method that works for us, whether it's in therapy, hypnotherapy, coaching. We don't invest in ourselves to develop those coping skills.
Yeah.
When stress happens, we can't develop those skills during stress.
We cannot develop those skills during crisis times. It's very difficult because then we are immersed. Then we are into the hypnosis of the crisis. We are into the reality of the crisis. And we should have some, even a little experience of how to do that in a more calmer state. So we can apply it back then. I think the easiest thing people can experiment with at any moment, which can also help them in moments of crisis, which again translates with how the nervous system works in the language of neurology. In hypnosis, usually we work more with in a more symbolic way. We work more like in terms of the symbols of human experience. We work with the visual content of the with the content of the operating system on the screen, not with the cables inside, right?
Yeah. Beautiful. I love that.
The simplest thing people can experiment at any moment is learning to go into neutral. You can learn to distance yourselves from whatever is happening. And it could be just even a little thing, like you are at work and there is a small distressing situation, which may not even affect you directly. Maybe someone is shouting to someone in the next office, and this makes you a little agitated, or something else that slightly upsets you. Then you can just like experiment with distancing yourself from that. And there are many methods for that. You can use this thing we talked about before. You can just imagine where you feel this uncomfortable feeling in your body and just taking it out and putting it on the side. Even this works. And
Yes.
yeah, like that's the simplest thing. Like before using complicated psychology tools and ideas and stuff, the simplest thing everyone can do is learning to go into neutral and noticing things from a more neutral perspective, because it is only then we can make more informed decisions and be more aware of the choices we have. So, yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I think, to use psychological terms, I think some people might have an initial response to that. Oh, that's dissociating. That's not, taking ownership of the moment. But I think it's important to recognize not every moment is our moment. Not every moment requires our emotional buy-in. Sometimes we are an observer, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's not only okay, but it's a good thing to not give away our energy, of which we only have so much,
Yeah.
to situations that don't require or ask that of us, because sometimes we're doing that. We're leaning into things that we haven't been even invited to lean into, and we're sacrificing our energy to those situations.
I mean, yeah, the internet is a perfect example of these things, how we can at any time lean into a keyboard warrior mode, so many people, and spend so much energy on something that's really like the effect of it is minuscule, but we are so much into it at the moment. And regarding the fact if we are like dissociating and we are not stepping into the moment, well, stepping into the moment is an option. It's an option. If someone wants to step into the moment, they should do that. And if they want to step out of the moment, as you said, like there's not, then they should you should have the ability to do that too. Wouldn't you rather have the ability to explore more options? And if
Yes.
you step out of a moment, well, then you can step back into it. Like it's not forever, but you can see if you can really want to step in. So it is small dissociation, but it's dissociation for clarity and purpose. I think that's
I
the
love it.
difference. It's the intention behind.
Yes, I love that. And I love the gift of control over the self, which really is the only control that we have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And how hypnotherapy is another tool that people can access. They can learn these skills and they can use them themselves in those moments of crisis, and they can invest in them in a moment of calm if they recognize that that tool is available. And that's why I'm just so excited to have you here and have you discussing this,
Yeah.
because it may not be a tool that someone has considered before they heard us discuss this today.
Yeah, I think a lot of hypnosis and hypnotherapy stays in the realm of what media presents, and while really it is about an effective way of working with the software of human experience.
That's beautiful. Now,
Yeah,
Orestis, I would love to share more. I love how we have just dove into the concept of hypnotherapy,
yeah,
and how people can start to think about this differently. Now, you have very actionable things that you do with your clients, and you
yes,
have very concrete resources to kind of bring this into something a bit more tangible for our listeners.
yes.
Tell me about your coaching, your website, and also about your Facebook group, Pain Peacemakers.
Yeah. Well, I'm a certified hypnotherapist. I help people essentially leave problems behind or go in the path that would allow them to leave them behind, using again these techniques of immersive and evocative communication by creating these shared experiences. And honestly, this can be for many different things, like mental blocks, feeling stuck, procrastination. And there is like chronic pain is an area in which I specialize in, uh, partially because of my own personal story with chronic pain. And yeah, and that's why I have this Facebook group called Pain Peacemakers, where it is about helping people become aware, even in more detail, about the options and about what pain is and how we can address it with mind tools. I even have a free audio file in there, a hypnotic meditation audio file, which can provide pain relief. So it's all about education and making people aware of what is possible, because truly pain resolves and goes away when we address the thing, the behavior, the thought, the environmental factor that activates the pain signals in us, and make peace with ourselves, make peace about how we feel externally, or change our surroundings. And that's why the group is called Pain Peacemakers. It doesn't mean make peace with the pain itself, although this can be a first step in finding the other reasons behind. But once we make peace with the thoughts, the patterns, the behaviors that drive the pain, then pain can go away. Yeah. And I wanted to make a contrast with the warrior label people use about chronic pain and chronic illness, which I do understand because I was also a chronic pain warrior. But being in a fighting mode all the time is actually what activates this fight flight response, and keeping it on all the time is dysregulating our nervous system and eventually leads to more pain. And so it's really long term, like not sustainable and not helpful for anyone. There are ways to fight for our health, for our whatever is going on with our body, and for getting better. But this should come from a place of acceptance and going along with it, not a place of contrasting ourselves with something. So that's what the Facebook group is all about. And yeah, and together with that, I also help people in one-to-one sessions overcome chronic pain for those who want a more personalized experience. Because there are various, actually, chronic pain modalities out there by now that are based on the mind. And they all have the same principle. It's the principle of self-reflection we discussed before. Whether one does it with journaling, because even journaling helps reduce chronic pain. Whether one does it with self-hypnosis, or whether one does it with a skilled practitioner, the principle is still the same. That being said, depending on how one does it, it may take longer time, shorter time, but the principle is the same. Self-reflection, expression, awareness, communicating all this with our unconscious mind, and closing the pain loop that has opened. Yeah.
I love the impactful language that you choose to communicate these concepts with. I think it is so healing and really helps. I really believe it's going to help listeners who are coping with chronic pain, give them another potential way to focus their energy and get out of that fighting mode, and potentially almost sit down at the table with that experience and decide if there's maybe another way forward if this way isn't working, and how will self-reflection take me there, and will I really invest in that? So I so appreciate the language you use and the coping skills that you're gifting people. And yes, if someone is interested in working with us, give us your website so that listeners can go there to contact you.
Oh, of course. The group is in Facebook. People can just access it through painpeacemakers.com. It redirects to Facebook. And if people want to have a free call with me, and so we can see how I can help them and discuss what's the best strategy for them, we can have a free one-on-one call, and they can check me out at engagehypnosis.com, because it is about having this engaging interaction between us and working together to find the best outcome on a case-by-case basis, because every person's story is different. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Orestis, thank you so much for being here on the show. It's been so wonderful to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Schaefer. It was great to be here. Thank you so much.
And thank you to our listeners for being here. If you have any questions, please comment on the show or contact me through www.drschaeferstedranova.com. I'm always happy to receive your messages, and we will continue to have amazing and inspiring conversations with wonderful people who have incredible stories and are making the world a better place, like Orestis. Thank you again for being here. Stay safe, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.